Okay, we're getting lots of attendees joining the session right now as we speak. My name is Tom Lane. I'll be your host for the day. I'll be presenting the presenters and the topic, and then at the end of the session, I will also go through any questions that you may have posted. Our today's specialist, Marjanen and Saverio Danubio. Today's session is approximately 1 hour long. There will be a recording made, and everyone who has registered to join the session will get access to the recording. The recording will be sent to you to the email address that you've used when registering to the session, and it will take roughly 1, sometimes 2 days for us to access the recording and then upload it to our YouTube channel. So it won't be available immediately after the session, but will take 1 to 2 days. We will also be today announcing the continuance to this free webinar season. We've had the season 1, and we've had now previously 5 sessions. This is the sixth one, and then in the autumn we will have 5 more at least. These topics and dates for the second season in the autumn will be announced immediately after this session in our LinkedIn company page. So when you go to LinkedIn, search for Manna Insect, follow the page, and there will be updates, not just regarding this and the future webinars, but also lots and lots of news, research, case studies, and much more. Generally important information if you have any interest in rearing or breeding black soldier fly. Today's topic, decentralized, local, mobile, scalable, from hype to reality. So how to set up Manna's kind of rearing solutions from the theory of rearing insects to actual practice, how to get your production up and running. Our specialists today are our Italian biotech guru or legend, Saverio Danubio, and Manna Insect founder and CEO, Marjanen. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone. We started to put the content and the topics based on, of course, some of them will overlap what we have been talking during the spring, but hope we can give you also some new insight as part of that. So if you're new to this and you haven't watched our previous webinars, I definitely urge you to watch the initial ones, especially because we're not we're relying or assuming that there is some background information already that we have said. If I look weirdly or tanned or tired, it's because finally we have summer here in Finland and actually sun, and then also it's 24/7 sunlight. So just in case you're wondering. So my name is Marjanen. With Manna Insect, we've been working on rearing and breeding black soldier fly more or less 5 years, figuring out different ways to do it in a modular way with simple technology that is applicable anywhere in the world. And now since last year, we've been deploying one application which is in 20-foot container to practically all continents. I'll let Saverio introduce himself and let's get going.
Yeah, hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and co-present this webinar. I'm Saverio Danubio, industrial biotechnologist and sustainable solutions developer. Okay, proceeding with the next slides. This is maybe our favorite slide because it's like everything for us starts from a crate. Like it doesn't matter how much you scale. At least in our imaginary vision of minimizing black soldier fly rearing, you have a crate, you have the substrate, and you have the larvae. And this is very important because then you decide, according to your situation, how big you want to become or you can become. And everything starts from few trays, and you will see later that everything should start in this way, because then you will acquire consciousness of several problematics. And starting little allows you to have little investments, to not require a long time for the realization, and to work with what you have. So maybe your garage or whatever is available. And then you can get and you can expand until your business has the size that satisfy actually your entrepreneur ego or your dreams. So this is not only related to the scale up, but this then little by little affects also the logic behind your production, the strategy that you are going to use. And in some cases, you don't have to produce by using high sophisticated technology. Sometimes, if you want to be just profitable, if you want to be the king of your little kingdom, you can be decentralized, you can have a medium production, and you can be modular. Modular, we will see what are the advantages to go for a modular production compared to a vertical, or you can say also decentralized versus centralized production. The scale matters. Yeah, there is no doubt. The scale at a certain point, it makes your choices to be different, to be adapted to what is the state of art, what you have, and what you can actually get. And there is no perfect setup, there is no perfect production strategy. Difficulties are behind the corner, whatever is the production that you decided to take. And you should be aware about that. If you are a young entrepreneur and if you have no experience, I don't know what the capital availability could be, but start little, as we will repeat over and over, and as we did also in the previous webinars, because problems are at any stage. So micro and small scale, for example, see that you typically have less resources available and you have to focus. It might be the case that you focus on very simple products like live larvae, and then you use what you have available as a facility for your production, and you use the substrates that are not difficult to source around you. And customers, those that do not require big quantities, and fertilizer, small production, you cannot all say, then you will need to find those kind of customers that purchase little quantities in order to increase the revenue. On the other side, large scale will have other kind of complications. You have to consider big investment, large capex, and then you go on a global scale, global problems as well. And the substrate, you order immense quantities and sometimes cannot be homogeneous, and your system might be so well calibrated that you cannot actually function well with a substrate that changes often. And the human resources, the engine of the company, yeah, then at this point you need high specialized human resources.
So it's important we talked about, let's say, decentralized modular versus centralized vertical. And of course, they're not exactly equal terms, but overlap very well. And the point of when we call modular means that each of the modules, so to speak, are standalone. And then you can repeat the standalone modules like Lego pieces, versus in a vertical model, you basically build it custom for that one specific purpose. And this means that you define a fairly large side from the beginning, as you need all the let's say parts of the process immediately, and they're not built to be modular in the sense. Of course, there's options to build additional housing or additional capacity as well, but you're immediately thinking thousands of tons, like Saverio explained. And in this, what it means is high automation level with like a higher level, more advanced equipment. The one question that we haven't discussed that much, because we have been focusing on the small scale and modular approach, where we have a lot of data and a lot of profitability and all the costs. So if you're interested in that, I do recommend then to watch our previous two webinars where we talk about the pricing and the cost structures and profitability. On the other hand, I cannot say, and I've never heard anyone give a data on what is the production cost, example, a kilo of live larvae in this vertical model, and is there really inherently a way to save costs, let's say, when you're building like a huge factories compared to small modular factories. But of course, this is the way to big partnership, big companies, and that's the only way to go, basically, because you need millions of dollars, and the human resources, of course, requires everything from entomologists to process engineers to salespeople and marketing. So in a vertical model, basically, you're building a town immediately with all the functions within a town or city that are required to function. While as the modular model is that each independent unit is standalone, and you don't need to start thinking about buildings from that point of view. You might need to repurpose or lease a warehouse for pre-processing or post-processing, or like a storage. But in a typical case, you don't need to start building anything, as the hard part of the process, the climatized area for rearing and breeding is within a standalone module. And this kind of cascades into, less need to start with huge costs, and you can start with smaller customers, and your resources can be basically one man. Like I said about productivity, I cannot compare the data, but if you find any data, or you have others that you ask, you can compare a standalone module which we have built, and we have, let's say, years of data. The price of producing 1 kilo of live larvae or frass is from $0.15 to $0.30, depending are you in developing country or developed country, to give you an idea that what is the cost where you can then start making products and profit.
And from this slide, we can see actually the potential of the modular production. Let's assume for a second that our customer is not the chicken, but the chicken farmer. And this person is waiting for the reseller to supply for the chicken feed. And systematically, there is a price increase, there is a delivery slowed, and he knows exactly that it doesn't depend by the reseller, but by all the production chain that is behind it. And as is visible here, the steps are many. And in the last couple of years, we have seen that any kind of problematic that impacts on the global level can actually change completely the market values. And the scenarios here is that one of these step might be the weak point of a chain, and might actually even treat the good end of the chicken production for a chicken farmer. On the other side, you have a rearing container. This solution can be directly owned by the farmer, or can be the idea of young entrepreneurs They understand that in that area there is a need and there is a margin for them to start a new business. And of course, you don't get these premium, super processed product with high added value. And we have seen how different are the ways of the fresh or dried larvae compared to the black soda fly larvae meal and even more processed products. But it's an option, and in some cases this option can be the best one. Small scale, is a small scale a profitable business? I would say yes, but let's see exactly what are the points that make a small business with reduced production to be profitable and to be successful. You have low OPEX that allows you to come out with a lower price. And the initial investment and hardware and so on are very reduced, like low capex, and you can use any space you have available, mostly. And the value of the organic matter that you typically supply or recover can be low, or you can even change on the way, because when the numbers are little, it's so easy to identify a new supplier and to even deal for reduced and more convenient substrate recovery. You can be paid sometimes, it depends by the situation. And local customers are small, so they don't make a big purchase, and they are not very demanding, and eventually it's even more convenient for them to buy from you. And with these systems that facilitate the activity of little entrepreneurs and make actually small, medium productions possible and convenient, you don't need to involve high skilled professionals.
The thing we should all be worried, and personally I've been worried, is this let's say hyping and let's say creating more hype than like concrete results. And we've seen that in typical industries, new industries. This happens. It doesn't matter if it's a VR or AI that used to be this way in the past, and so on. And how do we just make sure that we are not ourselves more excited than actually then creating value for the end customers, which eventually will be animal growers and farmers and plant growers. And of course, what speaks for a non-hype situation is that the insects and bacteria, of course, are a critical part, and nature uses them constantly. So inherently, it's already doing what we want to do it with. The chickens are eating live larvae if they find, and also some fish that are carnivores will do the same naturally. So it's already there, the nature uses it. And we do have cases, although we're still fairly fresh with, enough like industrial information, but we do have concrete cases where larvae has been fed to chickens, frass has been used as a fertilizer, and we have seen cases of equal growth or even better growth happening. And of course, we do have to do something with the bio-waste, and I have not yet found, as an engineer, a human technical way of upcycling that. We can use it as a biogas, but that's basically just downcycling one more time, and then we're left with less nutritious waste that still has to be handled. And what I really like about the insects is that it allows to create a food production which has weather resiliency. as the larvae can be even started small and then reared in a let's say a tiny spaces compared to plant, and we don't have to worry about soil health and these kind of things. And eventually we do need more protein and insect. I think, like, I can be wrong, I'm not entomologist, but I think insects are, based on what I understand, are the, let's say, the most cost affordable and efficient way to create animal protein. But this is where we should be, of course, very concerned, is that, I mean, based on my understanding, the production capacity, we're still talking like not probably even a dent of capacity. So, you know, if it's such a good, we do need to make it available for everyone. There's two ways to make it available. One is that you sell it as an animal feed product and people can buy it globally, or you produce tools like we do to allow anyone to produce it themselves, and that way to make it more and more available. The prices are also, in commercial prices of insect feed are at the level which is more or less suitable, maybe to you know, pet food, premium pet food, these kind of situations, but they're far away from animal feed prices, especially soy meal. And we are still, at least in Western world, unfortunately, cannot really use bio-waste that requires upcycling, where the substrates used for insect feed has to be at the level that there is already other use cases for that substrate. So that kind of sustainability potential is still not possible in these conditions, and that's why we really like many countries where the actual bio-waste can be used. And like I said earlier, there's clearly there is excitement in the newspapers and everywhere more than use cases, and we want to be very pragmatic. And if you're looking at vertical farming industry, which started about 5 years earlier than industry boom, there is a lot of challenges there because they're basically selling a commodity, but they have created a very high-tech environment to produce the commodity, which hasn't been more cost-effective than actually, you know, just growing plants. And they really struggle to showcase investor value in that sense. So this kind of startup culture doesn't have patience, let's say. And like I said, the restricted regulation, missing regulation is a problem, not just in developed countries, but in every country where there is not an established rules and regulations. So that's one thing that we do urge to make sure that what is the regulative steps, is there anything, what is being done in the country so that the rug will not be pulled underneath you in a couple of years when the actual rules and regulations come in.
The future role of insects. Will insects be a significant contributor for animal feed? We believe so. We strongly believe so. And this is because the soy and corn meal production alone is 200 and more million tons. And insects can contribute importantly into reducing these amounts. There is a, let's say, a basket of animal growers that counts tens of millions of figures, and today we are already competing with the price with the soy, that is the largely used protein source for animals feeding, and insects can be available locally. So for all the difficulties that I have recalled in the previous slide I presented, you can be within every country in every region, and this is not a negligible detail. And this is a technology that can be trained to millions of people. The nutritional the growth factors related to the insect plagues or the fly feed compared to soy. Some studies show that there are actually some benefits. Some animals seems to remind that they have been always sourcing their protein intake from the insects. So the benefits, sometimes it's not even the case of using the feed as the main protein source. Sometimes even with the supplementation of black soda fly, you see important improvements in the quality of the meat, of the taste, and of the health of the animal farmed. And on the other side, we have the companies and that produce these feeds, and the growers that always want to have the best results, that are afraid to change. And this doesn't really help the sustainability that we all are recalling today and we all want. But today we have benefits, today we have a good price. So the future of insects should be bright.
I think I already mentioned, but just to clarify that this is a continuing from, especially from our last two webinars where we talked about the modular system, in the case the pricing and the cost structure, OPEX and CAPEX and all that, which I recommend to check. The one modular way is to use shipping containers, and that's where we have started. So we have what we call a Manna Mind, is a control system that has, let's say, smart algorithms and remote monitoring capabilities of creating a efficient space for black soda fly larvae and flies to do their work. And one reason why we really like an application to use Manna Mind in a shipping container is because it is already available infrastructure that is easy to keep uninvited people outside. It's easy to insulate and create a very low power efficient system, and you can stack them and you can move them. The whole logistical chain in globally is basically built on shipping containers. So that's one example why we always use in our, let's say, pictures and these, we refer to shipping container. And also the size of a 20-foot shipping container is actually perfect to select a, let's say, consumer level equipment that are low cost, universally available everywhere, that still has the capacity to actually keep the whole volume maximally in use case. And we have more or less focused on making sure that you as an operator of a container or your employee doesn't have to really know too much about insect rearing and breeding or optimal conditions, more than what the loading and unloading parts of the container requires you to understand. And then you can remotely, let's say, monitor and focus on other things while the batch is running inside a container. And regarding of how many tons, you can then decide, okay, how many modular capacity do you need, and you can calculate that based on substrate. This is just to give you like a ballpark of what we are talking about in a typical case of a container size module in a year, where we are using Manna Mind technology and our algorithms. And this is one setup for rearing, is to use stackable insect trays and load the insect trays inside the container, and then close the doors and let the algorithms handle them for the next 10 to 14 days, depending on the recipe.
Next steps. So where to go from here? Everybody wants to have tomorrow a company up and running with a big production, economical satisfaction, and so on. But I don't know the audience that is listening to this webinar today, but we might share these recommendations, especially for those at the early stage, because despite the fact black swordfly business is relatively easy and possible, some details might be cared, and some homework should be done. What are the first steps? First of all, there should be an idea of how much feed your country or your region of interest imports. What is the cost of the regular animal feed? And what can be the availability and the cost and the type of substrate or organic matter, biowaste, as you want to call it, but you should have an idea of how much is present and expensive the product that actually you want to compete with, and how much is easy for you to actually obtain the organic matter you need for actually producing your larvae, your product. And then the most important thing, it doesn't matter how ideal the weather conditions or your technology is for this production, you have to be always aligned with your local legislation. And competitors, you want to compete with eventually the soy feed, but you will also have to see if there are other entrepreneurs that are already doing that, and make your evaluation on how they are saturating, or in the future they will saturate the market. And start little because first of all, it will be possible for you to immediately visualize some problematics that I can ignore, because it's specifically related to your production setup, to your area, and no one else might know about that. But with a little production, you can see them. And especially, and this is very important, sometimes you don't have an issue in your production, but you notice something that can become a problem. And in the phase of scale-upping, it comes immediately visible what you should not do or what you should prevent in order to make something that might be a problem to become the problem and the failure of your company. So start little and upscale according to your plans, that the least possible or the right possible. It's always hard to define that, but try to be flexible. Make your investment as a little as possible, and try always to look around. Don't believe that you have already the best setup. And it's also very important, put your informations on the paper. Try to develop a business plan and to always like benchmark it with the other subjects that are external, that are outside this entrepreneurial journey or this loop that might not show you other treats or opportunities. So benchmark it with external subjects, and then these papers can be actually the vehicle for you to get loan, to get capital investments, and you can start your business. And then there are plenty of possibilities. We are today discussing about black swordflies as a sustainable protein source for animal feeding mainly, but the fields where black swordflies can be very important are many: environmentally, bioremediation, and so on. So you can eventually get grants from your government or from other sources under many aspects. So never underestimate the power of a little business.
We strongly believe that black swordfly larvae can be profitably utilized anywhere in the world. Even one single person can start a insect farming business, and that's more or less our mission, is to create solutions which are accessible to as many people as possible, with the lowest possible cost of hardware and use, and possibilities to create livelihoods and even a profitable, like a company type of business. So we're constantly looking ways, what can we do, what are needed, and we have created a way to offer, let's say, a roadmap to people that basically either start from zero or have something already in the background, have done already something. In a typical case, we do these, of course, these webinars for the purpose of expanding the knowledge base of the basic things. But then what we do is, in many cases, a week to couple week direct consultancy to calculate the specific cases, go through the substrate, the legislative framework, and whatever needed to calculate what is the business potential, and try to, let's say, validate if there is really a business that let's say justifies the next level investments. And then for the technical part, we offer the Manna Mind unit, which basically can smartly climatize any kind of species. But we have, of course, a very vertical solution for a 20-foot container, which we can give a full turnkey service. But on the other hand, we have cloud-based applications that help you monitor and handle the production and especially the training part of operators. So if any of these interests, of course, we're happy to talk more and understand the cases and how we can help and how we can let BSF help anyone to let's say solve the issues that we see, which is more or less, the animal feed price is hard to handle, and alternative proteins are not that easy to grow, as most of them are plant-based and require good weather conditions and soil. So yeah, please let us know. We're happy to hear from anyone and understand different conditions and different needs in all around the world, more or less.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. We have once again quite a few questions. Let's see where we'll start. We'll start here. What are the main motives of a new entrepreneur to set up a business?
Other than what we discussed there, I think in any case, I would start by, certain amount of Excel practice and all this is always good, but start with 20 trays and a place depending on your country and let's say weather resiliency or the weather conditions, either indoors or even outdoors. But I think it's as simple as that, and then you get so much crucial learning when you do it with yourself, and also you prove after that you can, if you need funding or in any different sources, you can say that you have experience with the larvae. I think just the experience in itself at the beginning is hugely valuable. And maybe get even few chickens and use them yourself to chickens like we did, and see yourself that actually bloody hell this makes sense.
Okay, then Sayan is asking, what is the market warriors? And I assume he means that what is the competition like in these markets? If Sayan is listening, perhaps you can rephrase your question if I understood it incorrectly. But what is the competitive situation within the BSF marketplace?
I would say that the BSF, within BSF, I'm not sure, because we're not in this space of delivering, let's say, hundreds or thousands of tons to pet food industry or these kind of. So I'm not sure. Do they feel that there is competition amongst the BSF companies? But in a larger context, the real competition is against other protein commodities like soy meal, cornmeal, and of course in the pet food industry, it's the chicken meat and these kind of things. So in the simplest term, you have to be price competitive. That's it. And then it depends on the market. What is the alternative that they're currently using, which you are competing against? If you're selling to pet food, it's different than if you're selling to, let's say, a reptile market or to chicken as a chicken feed extra. You have to be consistently looking like what is the price parity in that industry compared to the effect that you are bringing as a value. And even the same price is typically not enough because you're introducing something new, which requires people to adapt and change, and there's inherent.
Okay, not sure if Uka dropped off the line. I think he was cut off a little bit. Perhaps he can continue when he gets back online. We do have another question from Sayan. What is the role of middlemen on this market? And if we increase or decrease middlemen, probably meaning that if we have more middlemen or don't use middlemen in selling the outcome of a process, what would be the sort of benefit of having somebody to pass it forward, or perhaps a wholesaler? What do you think, Saverio?
Yeah, sorry, I had a technical problem and my connection dropped for some minutes. Regarding the figure of the middlemen, in some cases they are necessary. If you don't think there is any really need of putting some entrepreneurs, some specialists in the middle between you and the final customer, you can try to go directly to that. And usually when you are a small business with limited production, with a number of customers that can already absorb your 100% production, and I would suggest anybody that is a young entrepreneur to never sell the entire production to just one customer. Diversify your sales in a way that you are always very robust, and if one customer changes mind, you can rely on others. But in general, when you scale and when you become big, these figures might become from useful to really necessary.
Yeah, I hope do you hear me now? Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Oh, okay, good. The only thing I wanted to really say addition was that how we think is that the shortest, cheapest, most power efficient and cost efficient way and most sustainable way is to have live larvae directly to a mouth of a chicken without any middleman. But of course, that's not realistic in many cases. So then you kind of go backwards from there. That okay, what needs to happen? Okay, there needs to be of course the grower. If the grower doesn't do it, and there's an insect entrepreneur who sells, he needs to get profit by selling it to a grower who gives it to the chicken, and so on. But I would kind of start from that end instead of the other end, where you have the whole long chain of resellers and global logistics. And then you're starting to figure out, okay, what is the price that you can sell it? Because yet no one has yet proven me that any additional steps from live larvae will be more cost efficient for some reason. I think it just adds more cost in each way. And then it's just a question that, okay, how little cost can I add between the larvae and the chicken, the animal, so to speak.
Great. Then two questions from Josefa. Between live and dried larvae, which one is most preferred by customers? And in case of live larvae, does it need to have a lean process between available larvae quantity and customer demand at the right moment, or how do you see it?
Well, I think this is of course the challenges of, let's say, small scale and modular, and that's why you need to be local and you need to be, let's say, flexible in that sense. The good thing about black soda fly larvae is that, first of all, when they're live, they still have let's say weeks that you can keep them live, so they don't expire immediately. There's many ways which are very, let's say, low cost ways that you can extend their life even though they're live, and have more flexibility. Of course, dried is preferred because now we're talking months instead of days, and they're 1/3 of the weight, and there's like a higher protein content in them. But there's of course the extra work of actually drying them out, which is, thermodynamics. It's not very efficient. So that does change that game. But then it's eventually up to your customers, that you need to find customers that suit your post-processing capabilities and your investment needs. And there's no like a real answer, but the lucky thing is that at least the end user, which is example a chicken, can use live, can use dried, and can use even meal. So he or she is very versatile.
Excellent. Then Richard is asking again 2 questions in a row. How do you organize your reproduction, as in a Manna container, and a nursery step is not included in the container concept, right?
Well, actually, I think it was the 4th webinar where we went through this. How do you get started? So the first container, you can start breeding, nursing, and rearing in one container, including everything as a standalone unit. Unless you have an option to actually buy eggs or buy 5 dough for someone else, which is also a very good option, especially at the beginning. And there are companies that does it, mainly, unfortunately, in Europe and within the European area. That's easiest. But then from there on, you can continue with either separate breeding and separate rearing containers. And typically in our case, the breeding container includes a space to handle the nursing part for the larvae. So basically outside, you get 5 to 7 larvae out of the breeding container.
All right. Demid is asking, its soy price compared to what is the soy price compared to live larvae?
That's a good question, and that's where, because I would say that the bulk of the industry is focused on defatted insect meal, and comparing mainly to, let's say, fish meal. There is very little studies. There are more studies coming this summer, but there's very little studies of how many kilos of live larvae would you feed to a chicken to replace 1 kilo of soy meal. My estimation, based on the results that there are now, is that it's between 2 and 3 kilos. But at 2.5 kilo live larvae versus 1 kilo of soy meal, you can calculate that the prices are about the same or a little bit less for live larvae, especially in emerging markets and developing countries. And then it depends. You can check in different countries. The price of soy can go from $450 to $700-800 a ton. So in some areas it's more lucrative than in other areas, depending on the subsidies and so on. But this just gives you an idea, and that of course is something that we have to acknowledge. But also this is true in especially in developing countries, that we just have to get a rule of thumbs. We can't go to lab of every batch of live larvae, and we can't get the nutritional micro details and everything. We just have to have a rule of thumb, but that's already better than not having anything to replace. So in that sense, it especially works better with modular and local and on-site in developing countries, where anything is better than the current situation or lack of not having soy at all.
Great. Then Sayan is asking, insects have an alkaline in nature. If animals regularly consumed insects, are there any health issues that can be expected?
Well, I can be a little bit cheeky and say that chickens and animals have a few 100 million years experience of eating insects without any issues. So I wouldn't be that concerned unless you're using bio-waste that humans have manipulated, meaning that humans have added toxins to it. But in nature, insects is the natural food of most animals. So in principle, there's no problem as long as you have some comfort of the substrate you're feeding. The insect itself is not accumulating anything toxic other than the substrate.
Saverio, do you want to add anything? I think Saverio had some network connection issues. Perhaps we can get him online again soon. A question for me, I guess. Andre is asking, where can we access previous webinars? Actually, this webinar recording will be sent to you within the next day or two, and early next week we will be sending all webinar registrants all the webinar recording links, as well as registration links for the autumn webinars. So everything will be coming available next week latest. Then a question for Uka. Doug is asking, what is the lead time for a ready-to-go container? How fast you can get one up and running for him?
I would say, depending on the country and few circumstances, a 2-month is a very good like a rule of thumb. Sometimes it can be 3 months if there is some equipment has to be ordered from another country, for example. But in a typical case, it's been 2 months from initial order that we have the container running. And the important part here is to also emphasize that in 90% of our cases, the container is sourced and assembled locally. So we're not shipping containers from Finland, because that would add a lot of extra lead time on it, and there's really no purpose. So our model is that we help to source the container and assemble it locally, and then we train people that they can do the next following containers themselves, or any kind of other spaces they want to use to create the climatized conditions.
Okay, I believe the next question comes from Japan. Ryosuke is asking, can flies be grown in containers to get eggs? Apparently regarding the breeding. So can you make your own eggs in a container?
Yes, that's the short answer. Basically, how we do it and practically, let's say the technology works, is that we can refurbish and convert a space into a programmable climatized environment, where we can optimize then for either breeding, nursing, or rearing, or any compromise or any configuration on those, that they always provide the perfect conditions. So we get the whole purpose compared to, let's say, outdoors, is that BSF exists with 5% efficiency, and that's plenty for them to thrive and survive in the nature. Commercially, 5% is nothing. We need 90%, and that's where the climatized environment comes, that can mimic the best possible conditions for each of the stages of larvae in a breeding or rearing part, and then we get 90%, and then the BSF will thrive and become like hugely powerful tool to upcycle biowaste to animal feed.
Excellent. And if you have any questions regarding the actual setting up of a container or the business calculations, please do remember that mannainsect.com actually has a free Black Soldier Fly business calculator available on the website for anyone to use, and you can use our contact form at the website to talk to our business development people, who will then again explain in more detail and send you more materials on how the technology actually works and how to calculate the business opportunity. Then Jordi is asking, what quantity can be produced in a single Manna container, and how can you escalate the Manna container to produce, a huge amount of tons? So I'm not sure how much, what is the sort of size, but how much can a Manna container produce larvae per month, and how much bio-waste can it upcycle?
So we have most experience in a 20-foot container. So, and that's not the only option to use our let's say smart climate as control system, but that's which we have used, because that is a perfect space to use very low cost universally found equipment. And within the container, a let's say a good rule of thumb is that a 10 ton of bio waste can be converted to 1.5 tons of live larvae in a month with 3 days of work. And again, I do remind that we have gone this through in the previous 2 webinars in more detail of what does that mean in practice. But that's a rule of thumb. And then the frass can be anywhere from 2 to 4 tons, depending on the quality of the substrate. And then what comes to, let's say, huge capacities and these, you have to think like a car analogy compared to a train analogy. That are you building a 2 centralized hub and have thousands of people going from 2 specific points, or are you delivering decentralized logistics to have millions of people commute in a car which take from 2 to 4 people? And we are more on the latter, on this car analogy, that if you want to create within your country a let's say a significant production capacity, which is really needed if we want to use BSF, the option is either to build one or few huge factories, or then have few containers or container types volumes in each farm to handle that farm, and then distribute that to hundreds of thousands of farms.
Yes, and I guess the next question is more or less a follow-up question, even if it comes from a different person. Doug is saying that they have 10 tons of feedstock, waste or bio-waste per month that costs to dispose plus transportation. A break-even would be great, and selling BSF larvae will be easy since they have local farms everywhere. But is poultry protein waste a good feedstock or a good substrate for the larvae?
Yeah, in short, yeah. Of course, with caveats of not knowing exactly, but in general, anything that comes, let's say, that is used to feed poultry and what comes out of poultry, meaning poultry manure, both are, from BSF point of view, excellent sources of growth. Then it depends on the legislation. Can you use it as a feed, or can you create fertilizer products from that? And can you use the part of the service, let's say, to get income from actually handling the bio waste or the manure, and that costs something. But in general, that's a very good starting point to start making, let's say, profit, sustainable profit in many ways with that concept.
Okay, Jordi had a follow-up question on how to upscale the production. Perhaps I can quickly answer it here. So if you want to upcycle different sort of size of waste per month, then scaling up with containers is so much easier and more affordable than setting up a factory that is sometimes going way too slow or having no input at all compared to, for example, adding containers. When you scale up your production, the containers are removable. They can be mobile and transferable to just about everywhere close to the bio-waste source or the end user. Then Ryosuke is asking a bit more open question. So could you tell us a little bit more about how the container actually works?
Yes, I think, I mean, again, this is, I think in some webinar we went a little bit more detail on this, but in principle, the core, let's say, solution that we have is a a control unit that can control humidifiers, dehumidifiers, heaters, and these very agnostically, practically any equipment. And they have been set up inside the container, so to the end of the container, which I think there's one of these earlier pictures here. You can see on the left the equipment. We have basically for 20-foot container, we have a bill of materials of optimal equipment to choose, and then there is a ventilation pipes that circulate the air, and basically this allows to create a setup where we can programmably define the temperature, humidity, and CO2 levels inside the container, depending if it's breeding and rearing or rearing happening there. But the equipment that you can see on the back is pretty simple hardware store type of equipment that you just plug into the wall, and the Manna Mind basically decides if that equipment should be on or off to produce either heat, or cool air, or heating, dehumidifying or humidifying air, and so on.
Okay, that was quick. Mustafa is asking, so how are the eggs produced? Are they typically locally in a Manna container, or should they be imported from different location? I guess we've gone through this already, but if you can briefly sum up.
Yeah, it's in most cases, in the long run, you do want to have, let's say, more security, at least within the country, the eggs. Then it depends on, of course, what is the price of eggs that you can buy compared to produce your own. But of course, we have more or less 5 years of experience of using our container for breeding, and have cages inside the container and create a continuous mating cycle to get about 2 kilos of eggs from one container continuously out. And that is, of course, at least for us, because then you don't need to calculate, there's no shipping costs. That has proven to be the most cost-effective way per production. But then you have to consider other factors as well, like how much do you value the cost of eggs. And I think in the previous webinar, we went through how the cost of eggs per gram affects your OPEX and profit margins.
Yes, and I guess Louise here has been attending our webinars before, or perhaps she has been discussing this with Uka earlier, because she's asking, so how are the plans progressing to add a breeding section into rearing container? Have you already done that? Because earlier the containers have been either breeding or rearing containers.
Yes, now we have defined a configuration that has the breeding, nursing area, and trays inside. And in principle, you can do this in a container, because the actual space is not fixed. So it's an empty space, so you can reconfigure the space however you like. But yes, we did listen. We created our own suggestion on the breeding, having the breeding cages there with the nursing area and trays, and you can still handle within this one container solution about 4 tons of bio-waste instead of that 9-10 tons of bio-waste within the same container.
Okay, a few more questions. I guess next one would be well suitable for Saverio. Baraka is asking, which is more nutritious, live or dried larvae?
In general, I would say live larvae. Giving wet food to the livestock is always better, but it's not always possible, and it becomes more complicated. If you are a farmer that decided to create a Manna containers small grid, and has the availability every day to provide some fresh larvae to the chickens or whatever are the animals, I would say try to go for live larvae, and in this way you can also modulate the size of the larvae, because the bigger is the larvae, the higher is the content of chitin, or you can also play a little bit with the substrate and the protein and so on. But not everybody can have the possibility to provide live larvae. They are more complicated to handle. Dried larvae is already a solution that doesn't require big investment in terms of post processing, but you have a product that you can put in your storage area, and you can in somehow deliver to the customers with the larger range of days, and in the business this also makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I should just also clarify that, of course, if you're comparing 1 kilo of dried larvae to 1 kilo of live larvae, the dried, of course, is more condensed in protein and this, because the water is not there to weigh. So, but if you're comparing apples and apples, so you're feeding the same amount of protein, then, like Saverio said, of course, you know, chickens and most of the animals have been adapted to eat live larvae better, but there are very, let's say, practical reasons why you would use dried larvae in that sense. So that's just to remember as a conversion.
All right. I guess Saverio can answer the next one first as well. For pets like cats and dogs, will the whole larvae be enough to suit the nutrient needs of the pets, or will we need to elaborate a formula for that? This is from Abdel Jalil.
Well, it's not easy, because between the kingdom of the dogs, for example, there are different breeds with different requirements, and I would say that in terms of protein uptake, in terms of fat and micronutrients, black soda fly can cover most of the diet. Obviously, I would not suggest to have a forecast on a pet food that is 100% based on the black soda fly. They can integrate, and the recent studies say that black soda fly are actually a valuable solution for the pet industry. And many startups, many in black soda fly companies are betting heavily on the pet food sector as the sector where they can be successful. So it's a right way to go. But on the percentage exactly, I would say that as you need still a certain level of integration from other nutrient sources.
Yeah, well, I've seen pet food products that have 40% black soda fly in it, and I've seen ones that have 5% black soda fly in it. And then it's just a question that is it a protein additive, or is there other, let's say, the micronutrients, have that been like assumed to come from the black soda fly larvae? So there's a lot of variability, and you know, not being a nutritional scientist, some of these things go a little bit beyond my, let's say, capabilities to follow up. But I've just seen a lot of variability, and I think mainly for dogs, the concept is now just to make sure that the palatability and the taste and everything is good. When you start increasing it to, let's say, a maximum level, that becomes kind of a challenge with even if it would be nutritionally better, for example.
All right, then the next one I believe is perhaps more suitable for Yuka. Daisuke is asking, how competitive would the Manna business model be if larger scale BSF business operation exists already in the area, assuming that there may be a factory? And then what would be the competitive advantages of Manna's containers?
I would say that first of all, I'm very happy someone tells me what is the actual production cost of a live larvae in a bigger factory to understand that. But I think in principle, let's say a professional insect factory typically produces insect meal, and that insect meal I've never seen a prices below $2 a kilo at this point, and that is not then, let's say, competitive if you want to replace soy meal. So I think it's just a question that what are you competing against? If you would do in a smaller scale or in a modular scale the same post processing and competing with the same insect meal product, at the moment I don't think there's any benefits, but I don't see any let's say competitive disadvantages either, especially if you can be closer to the bio waste and have less logistics by having a decentralized model and having maybe centralized post processing. But I think in principle, at least what we are focusing is the applications using black soldier fly in a way that this vertical method cannot not just compete, but cannot even address, which is local, direct to animals at soil level prices with minimal, and then giving a possibility for a insect entrepreneurial livelihood. So in that sense, I don't really see it as a competitor, or I see that another side of the coin, which seems to be just overly emphasized in insect industry. Everyone seems to be there building these factories, and we still see a huge need on the other side of coin where we're practically alone on trying to help and give tools to farmers directly. So I don't see this as a competitiveness or competition. I see it more like alternative ways to utilize black soldier fly.
Yeah, I would also add that today the costs for big plant with the high automation is justified, for example, for the pet food sector, because they have a certain costs and they have to come out with the premium product with high added value with the high cost. And with these modular systems, you can have still a quite important production, but the costs are lower, and you can be right in front of your customer, and your product is cheaper, maybe not hyper processed as somebody may demand, but you can certainly answer the need of many. And yeah, I mean, you have another cost, you have another product, and another price. So the competition might be smaller than what somebody may think about.
Yes, and if I may add here that now we're forgetting frass. I mean, frass as a fertilizer, even if you sell it as a bulk product, meaning that you sell all to individual customers, the price level may be fairly low, but it's still, maybe a fairly affordable and profitable business. Whereas if you are able to package the frass and sell it in 1 kilo or 2 kilo bags and so on in the local hardware store or supermarket or whatever, or directly to consumers, the price level may be extremely high for premium price of frass. We actually published recently an article regarding frass. You might want to check out that from the Manna website or at Manna LinkedIn company page when you search for articles. The frass may sometimes even be much greater business opportunity than the BSF itself, even if it's been, even if it may be considered as a premium protein product. A question from Demit again. How would you solve a smell issue?
Well, most of the cases, the smell hasn't been an issue when you just take few things into consideration. One is, of course, if we're talking 1 to 2 containers, in a case we're not producing that much ammonia to the air that it would, let's say, pollute a big area from smell. And then the other is that if you just don't put it in 10-meter radius to an office or a home where there's an intake of air inside the house or a space, and you take these few considerations into account, the smell hasn't been really a huge issue, and especially if you're in agriculture or in developing countries, in rural areas, in any case, that's rarely a problem. There are a few ways to reduce and the smell, at least in, let's say, in our container level, when we're talking like fairly low cost ways to do that. We're talking like €100 active filtration or a ozone killer. Those have been proven to be very effective to reduce it, even in the city areas. So it is a good thing to always remind. We do remind always our customers, so that doesn't come as a negative surprise. But so far, in all our practical cases, it hasn't become an issue.
Yeah, and I would simply add that the smell can be very case specific. It doesn't matter if you use my same substrate, and we are always farming with black fly, and the genetic might be the same. The way how you farm, the way how you prepare your substrate can impact on your smell production. Maybe the smell that now we are imagining is completely different than the one you are having, and unfortunately the smell cannot be sent by email and somebody can check from remote. But if you consider that your smell is not contained, maybe try also to see if your recipe can be improved. At Manna Insect, actually, there is a lot of work in different areas of the black fly rearing, and regarding the substrate, the optimal substrate formulation, there is a lot of work behind that soon will come and will be available for customers.
Great. Then a follow-up question to Ykkä. Louis was asking earlier regarding the sort of combined container for breeding and rearing. Louis is asking 2 kilos of eggs in which time frame? Ykkä, I believe you mentioned that 2 kilos of eggs can be produced in this combination container.
No, it's so 2 kilos of eggs from a dedicated breeding container in a month is a good practical rule of thumb. Right. Of an average output that you can rely on. And then of course we can do so much with the climatization and handling and optimizing the conditions. Then it's of course about the process of making sure that there's enough flies in every cages. That's one where we rely on, of course, the BSF in itself, and then on, of course, the practical work, that how well it's maintained and so on. But it's a good rule of thumb to expect 2 kilos a month from a 20-foot container with about 6 hours a week work.
Okay, excellent. Then perhaps for Saverio, how can the extraction of oil be profitable in the BSF, sort of from an investment point of view?
Well, the oil extraction, the black fly oil can be very profitable, and this is demonstrated by the antimicrobial properties or by those molecules that have some application in the beauty and health sector, at the level that today we can say that there are more than one cream and lotion in the cosmetic sector that includes also black fly oil. Obviously, you need to produce that according to certain kind of standards, starting from the location, the food used, and whatever is your local requirement. But oil that should be removed from the larvae if you want to produce a black fly meal, because a high content of fat then lowers incredibly the shelf life of your protein meal. So you have this oil, and it's a lot of added value. I can imagine you can extract value when you have a big production also producing a good biodiesel. So it's really case specific. please contact Manna Insect and let us more to know more about your case, and maybe we can give you more guidance regarding what can be your next step.
Uka, I believe we've already discussed BSF oil quite a few times. Perhaps you can also touch base on this one.
Yeah, first of all, to utilize BSF oil, you need a, let's say, fairly, I wouldn't say advanced, but you need post-processing capabilities beyond just drying. You need to defat, and then you need to filter and so on. And then the question is that, what do you compare? Where is it highly competitive? And what is the price range that you're competing against? I'm not 100% sure that there's like a high, let's say, competitiveness other than the price point. So I don't know. Like I haven't seen like a huge need other than there is a reason why the protein meal, the insect meal, typically is defatted because of the machinery and equipment, and the recipe making makes it easier after that. But I haven't really seen. I might be wrong, but I haven't really seen like a BSF oil reasons to defat and utilize the oil. It's been that, okay, now there is the oil, okay, we need to sell the oil for something because it's already defatted because of the protein. So I mean, at least from my point of view, what I understand, I mean, if we're talking frass and the larvae, we're talking the protein mainly. The oil has seemed to be the kind of the least interesting from application, or least competitive in certain way. In that, like I said, I might be talking from my a-hole because I don't really know the details on that, but that's my impression.
Yes, thank you. It was a good question from Ibrahim. Two last questions. So. One from Josefa, would you suggest to start directly with a Manna container solution, even if you're only starting with 10 trays?
I might be, I'm a little bit biased, but I don't like, I would still, we are very comfortable of recommending our customers to do as much as possible before investing at all. And even investing in Manna containers. So it's because that gives you more. We are of course happier when the customer, gets then a positive way to get started. So if there is like a short-term plans to go further, quicker, maybe, but we're still talking like typical Manna container delivery times of around 2 months. So you're not really losing much if you, let's say, invest $500 to a small greenhouse with a radiator, and you buy 30 trays, and then you do that first and start learning. So it depends on your need, but I would still suggest doing that way, and then it's easier to talk when you have your own kind of hands, dirty hands from rearing and maybe even breeding.
So backyard, compost, or greenhouse to start with, and then scaling up to container. What would you estimate? At which stage, or how much sort of bio waste would you need to have to upcycle, or how much protein is as an outcome would be a good level to move from these greenhouse or outdoor cages into a container? What would be a sort of turning point, or sort of maybe even a break-even point there?
Well, I wouldn't actually. I would think it differently. I would think that when you are convinced that you want to be an insect entrepreneur and you want to create a business out of that, either to yourself or to create a business ecosystem within your country, and we have both kind of customers, then let's say, even though I'm biased, I would say that our solution is the most like price competitive and fastest way to get to a professional level of actually starting making revenue and profit. What I suggest doing before that is to find the cheapest possible and most cost affordable ways for you to get convince yourself that you want to commit and start insect business or business relating to insects around that. And that you can do in a greenhouse with few trays and start. That's what we did for a year before we even let's say we're fully committed and say, okay, we're going full in with insect business. So it's more or less not about the metrics. It's more about let's say your conviction and how to get that conviction to yourself.
Great. And then the last one from Daisuke. Do you offer a trial minimum scale all-in-one package with training, with or without the container, for market validation and demonstration for example, raising funds?
Yeah, so we have few ways to help people before that. Of course, one is these webinars and the calculator and all that. That's basically free. The next level is that we can do a 1 week consultancy, which is about €5,000 level, where we use all our effort to help you fill the gaps. And we do also have multiple containers all around the world where we can do trial recipe testing, prove that a certain substrate work, calculate the economics in practice. And also we're happy to invite people, and we have people coming and have been here in Finland to actually train in practice, which we call Manna Academy, to come here and learn in practice and use it in their own purposes. So every possible way where we can get our customer to a point where they're convinced that they want to move forward is what we try to do.
Great. So I guess we're inviting Daisuke to Finland. You're
Yeah.
welcome to visit our premises in Kempele, as well as our reference farm close by. And then, of course, we do have all the webinar recordings coming available for each and every one of you, even if you're watching this from recording. At this point, I will thank you, our specialists, Uka and Saverio. Thanks for, once again, great presentation and answering so many difficult questions. All these recordings, as well as the registration links to our autumn webinar series season 2, will be sent to you latest early next week. But the actual dates and topics will be announced in the next 30 minutes or at Manna Insect LinkedIn page. So if you wish to follow up on what's happening on the BSF field in general, we share quite a lot of news, research, business cases, use cases, calculations, and whatever on our LinkedIn company page. So do follow up on that one. And also, if you wish to subscribe to our newsletter that's collecting together all the highlights for basically once a month or max twice a month, you can also subscribe to the newsletter at mannainsect.com or through the LinkedIn company page of Manna Insect. Thank you everyone for joining. Thanks again for so many questions. And if you wish to get in touch regarding Manna solutions and exact evaluation of your case, please do get in touch with us through the website contact form at mannainsect.com. Thanks for joining, and have a great midsummer. The midsummer festivities start tomorrow. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye, everybody.